The sun had just begun to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the streets of London, when Harry heard a firm knock at the door of his flat. He glanced up from the stack of reports he'd brought home from the station, a sense of unease creeping into his chest. Few people would drop by unannounced, and even fewer without giving him a heads up first. The urgency of the situation was palpable. When he opened the door, he found himself face to face with Kingsley Shaklebolt, the Minister for Magic. Dressed in his signature deep purple robes that seemed to shimmer in the dim hallway light, Kingsley's presence was as commanding as ever. "Kingsley," Harry greeted, stepping aside to let him in. "I wasn't expecting you." "Harry," Kingsley said with a nod, his voice calm but carrying an underlying tone of seriousness. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." "Not at all," Harry replied, closing the door behind him. "Come in. What brings you here?" Kingsley didn't waste time with pleasantries. As soon as they sat in the living room, his expression grew somber. "I wanted to speak with you about the recent incidents in the Muggle world, the disturbances, the sightings, and particularly this business with the witch on the broomstick. We're trying to piece together what's happening, and more importantly, who's behind it." Harry nodded, leaning forward slightly. "I've been dealing with it from the Muggle side, but something is happening. Someone is deliberately pushing the boundaries between our worlds. Whoever it is, they're not just making random trouble. They have a purpose." Kingsley's expression didn't change, but his eyes showed a glint of concern. "We've been investigating as well, but the leads have been thin so far. That's why I wanted to talk to you. You've been closer to the action than most. What's your take on all of this?" Harry took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "It feels like someone is testing the waters, trying to gauge how far they can push before things unravel. The witch I encountered, she was practically taunting me, hinting that the wizarding world won't stay hidden for long." Kingsley frowned, absorbing Harry's words. "That's what we feared. There's a growing concern that this isn't just the work of a few reckless individuals. It could be part of a larger movement designed to force our hand." Harry met Kingsley's gaze, knowing what was coming next. "I understand the need for caution, but I have to say, extending the trace to every witch and wizard is a bit far-fetched. It's an extreme measure, and I'm not convinced it's the right approach." Kingsley sighed, rubbing his temples in a rare display of weariness. "I don't like it either, Harry, but the Wizengamot is pushing for drastic action. They believe that if we can monitor magical activity more closely, we might be able to prevent further incidents." "But the trace was always meant for underage wizards," Harry countered. "Extending it to everyone, it feels like we're sacrificing too much for the sake of security. It's invasive and could lead to distrust within our community." Kingsley nodded, his expression grim. "You're right, of course, but there's a real fear out there, Harry. People are terrified that the statute of secrecy could be broken wide open. If that happens, well, we've seen how dangerous that can be." Harry couldn't argue with that. The fear was palpable, and he knew how fragile the balance between the magical and Muggle worlds was. "I just think there has to be another way, something less heavy-handed." "We're exploring all options," Kingsley assured him. "But I wanted to hear your thoughts as someone deeply involved. Your perspective is invaluable." Harry appreciated the sentiment, but the weight of the situation hung heavily over them. "I'll keep doing what I can from my end. We need to figure out who's behind this and their endgame. Until then, we're just putting out fires." Kingsley rose to his feet, his presence as imposing as ever despite the circumstances. "Thank you, Harry. I'll take your concerns back to the Wizengamot. In the meantime, stay vigilant. If you uncover anything at all, reach out to me immediately." "I will," Harry promised, standing to see Kingsley out. As they reached the door, Harry paused. "And Kingsley, thanks for listening." Kingsley gave a rare, warm smile. As the door closed behind the minister, Harry leaned against it momentarily, feeling the weight of the conversation settle over him. The situation was growing more complicated by the day, and the choices ahead were anything but simple. But if there was one thing he knew, he couldn't let fear drive their decisions. They had to find a way to protect both worlds, without losing themselves in the process. The late afternoon sun sank below the skyline, casting the city in a deep amber glow as Harry and his colleagues arrived at the robbery scene. The usually bustling street was eerily quiet, cordoned off by police tape and lined with flashing lights from squad cars. Officers were scattered around, interviewing witnesses and securing the perimeter, but the tension in the air was palpable. Harry knelt beside a shattered display case inside the upscale jewellery store, his fingers lightly grazing the shards of glass on the floor. The robbers had been there moments ago, yet they were gone, as if they had vanished into thin air. He could still hear the alarm echoing in his ears, mixing with the panicked voices of bystanders who had seen the impossible. "Bloody hell," muttered Thompson, one of Harry's colleagues, as he surveyed the scene. "Did you see that? They just disappeared." Another officer, a younger recruit named Daniels, shook his head in disbelief. I can't explain it. One second they were there, the next, gone, like ghosts or something." The disbelief in his voice was palpable, mirroring the confusion of the situation. "Not ghosts," grumbled an older, grizzled sergeant. "It's those wizards again, I'm telling you. This isn't the first time we've seen something like this." Harry clenched his jaw, his frustration mounting. He had been right there, just a few steps away from apprehending the suspects, only to have them slip away with a flicker of magic. The officers around him were murmuring in confusion and fear, trying to understand what they had witnessed, but Harry knew exactly what had happened. "Damn it," he cursed under his breath, standing up abruptly. The weight of the situation was pressing down on him, and he knew he needed answers, fast. Without another word to his colleagues, Harry strode out of the store and pulled out his mobile phone. He punched in Charlie's number, his mind racing as he waited for the call to connect. After a few rings, Charlie's voice came through the line, calm but curious. "Harry, what's going on?" Harry didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Charlie, we've got a problem. I'm at the robbery scene, and the suspects, whoever they are, use magic to disappear right before us. They were here 1 second, and then they just vanished." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line before Charlie responded. "That sounds serious. Did anyone see what happened? Are there any witnesses?" "Plenty," Harry replied, glancing back at the scene where his colleagues were still trying to process what they had seen. "Some officers think it was wizards, and they're not wrong. This is getting out of hand, Charlie. It's one thing to have random incidents, but this, it feels like someone is deliberately escalating things." Charlie's voice grew more urgent. "Where are you now? I'm still at the zoo, but I can meet you somewhere. We must figure out what's happening before it spirals even further." "I'll come to you," Harry said decisively. "I need to get out of here before anyone starts asking too many questions I can't answer. I'll be there in 20 minutes. "All right," Charlie agreed. "I'll be waiting." Harry hung up and quickly went to his car, his mind already spinning with the implications of what had just happened. The magical disturbances were becoming more frequent, more brazen, and he couldn't shake the feeling that they were building towards something much bigger. He needed to get to it, before it was too late. Harry's thoughts turned to Kingsley's visit earlier, as he drove through the city. The minister's concerns about the potential exposure of the wizarding world seemed more justified with each passing day. If these incidents continued, there would be no hiding the truth from the Muggles. But Harry wasn't about to let that happen. He would find the people responsible and stop them, no matter what it took. With renewed determination, Harry pressed down on the accelerator, heading straight for the zoo and the answers he hoped Charlie could provide. Harry's car screeched to a halt outside the zoo, his mind still racing with the day's events. He hurried through the gates, his footsteps echoing in the growing darkness as he made his way toward the reptile house. The familiar chill of the evening air wrapped around him, but the tension in his chest made him quicken his pace. When he reached the entrance to the reptile house, he hesitated for a brief moment before pushing open the door. The dim, greenish light inside cast long shadows across the room, highlighting the glass enclosures that lined the walls. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the low hum of the reptiles moving within their habitats. Harry's eyes quickly scanned the room and landed on Charlie, standing near one of the giant snake enclosures. His back turned as he observed the movements of a particularly massive boa constrictor. But Harry's heart nearly stopped when he saw who was standing beside him. Andrew. Andrew leaned casually against the enclosure, seemingly engrossed in whatever Charlie said. His usual easygoing demeanour was on display, but Harry could see a hint of curiosity in his boyfriend's eyes. Whatever conversation they were having, it was clear that Andrew was intrigued. For a moment, Harry didn't know what to do. He had come here expecting to discuss serious matters with Charlie, deeply intertwined with the secret world he belonged to, a world Andrew knew nothing about. And now, to find them together, chatting as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Harry felt the ground shift beneath him. Charlie must have sensed Harry's presence because he turned around, a warm smile spreading across his face as he spotted his friend. "Harry, you made it!" Andrew looked up as well, his expression brightening when he saw Harry. "Hey, there you are! Charlie was just showing me some of these incredible creatures. I had no idea you two knew each other." Harry smiled, but his mind was scrambling to figure out how to handle the situation. "Yeah, we go way back." Andrew nodded, unaware of the undercurrent of tension that had suddenly filled the room. "Charlie was telling me about some of the work he does here. It's fascinating, really. I can see why you'd be friends." Harry glanced at Charlie, who gave him an understanding and apologetic look. It was clear that Charlie hadn't intended this to happen, but now that Andrew was here, they had to navigate the situation carefully. "Yeah, Charlie's full of surprises," Harry said, his voice tinged with nervous energy. He shot Charlie a look and said, "We need to talk." Andrew, still oblivious, continued. "I was just about to head out, actually. I've got a late shift tonight, but I couldn't resist seeing the reptile house when Charlie offered. You don't mind if I leave you two to catch up, do you?" Harry quickly shook his head, relieved that Andrew was making an exit. "No, of course not. Thanks for stopping by." Andrew smiled and stepped over to give Harry a quick kiss. "I'll see you at home later. Don't stay out too late." Harry nodded, feeling a pang of guilt as Andrew left the room, the door swinging shut behind him. As soon as they were alone, he turned to Charlie, his smile fading. "What was he doing here?" Harry asked, his voice low but tense. Charlie held up his hands in a placating gesture. "He showed up out of the blue, Harry. I didn't know you hadn't told him about us, about me being your contact. He seemed interested in the zoo, and I didn't want to be rude." Harry sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's not your fault. I just didn't expect to juggle all of this right now. Things are getting out of hand, Charlie. The robbers today, they disapparated right in front of my colleagues. People are starting to connect the dots." Charlie's expression grew serious. "I know, it's escalating faster than we thought, but we'll get to the bottom of it. You did the right thing coming here." Harry nodded, his frustration ebbing away as the gravity of their situation settled back in. "Let's focus on what's important. What did you find?" Charlie motioned for Harry to follow him deeper into the reptile house. "It's something you need to see for yourself. It might give us a clue about who's behind all of this." As they moved toward the back of the room, Harry couldn't help but feel a knot of anxiety in his stomach. His secrets were becoming more challenging to manage, and the line between his two worlds blurred daily. But for now, he had to push those thoughts aside and focus on the task. If they didn't stop whoever was behind these magical incidents, there would be far more than just personal complications to worry about.